Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 116. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Tuesday. We got. I wonder who the Steelers will offer up to the media. I guess I'm assuming that Tuesday is going to be another Zoom media day, if you will. So, any guesses to who that might be if they offer somebody up?
I have no idea. It's a good question. I'd love to hear from like a Vince Williams type. What player have you not heard from this offseason that you would like to hear from? Is there any one particular guy?
That's a good question, too. Maybe Matt Filer.
Ooh, what would you want to ask Matt Filer?
Just what his kind of expectations are about the position, possible position swap, and you know, things along those lines. You know, the loss of Ramon Foster and what it means, and just, you know, kind of questions about his progression and all. Just little things like that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Do we still think he's going to – I know there was a report that I think last week it was, that Filer's just not going to move to left guard unless there's an emergency, and just really downplaying that idea. Do you take much stock into that report?
No, I don't, because I mean, I understand you didn't spend a lot of money on Stefan Wisniewski, okay? And because his ability to play center, you know, or be the backup now, you know, throws into question there, you know, do you really want your backup center playing left guard and blah, blah, blah. But then on the flip side, you know, you want the best person playing left guard there on top of it. But even so, I still think Matt Filer is probably the best fit for the position there, you know?
Mm-hmm. And just to the report itself saying they only move him in an emergency, they moved him last year in the middle of a season in a non-emergency. They could have easily started B.J. Finney like they had been, and I understand it's Aaron Donald, and I guess that was the impotence for why they wanted to kick Filer inside for that game. But that was a non-emergency situation, and they did it. So clearly, and that's the big reason why I've said Filer could move to left guard again, because they did that. Had they not done that last year, I'd be probably a little more skeptical of it. So we'll see. Unfortunately, might not be able to really tell at camp, but I bet you Filer plays mostly left guard at camp, because that's what he was doing last year, and they let Okorafor try to show something at right tackle. Ultimately didn't happen, but we'll have to find out in the preseason. Maybe it's our first eyes on it. Yeah,
I mean, look, it's not one of those things that's obviously just kind of set in stone right now. You know, at least, you know, it's one of the things that, along with kind of nose tackle and all, you know, we're going to have to wait and see mode on. You know, so right. But you know, as I've said pretty much all along, when it comes to those guys, you know, talking about Filer and Wisniewski, I expect it to be Filer, but I guess I won't be shocked if it is Wisniewski.
Yeah, Wisniewski, it's been a long time since he's been a full-time starter. I think it's 2015 with Jacksonville, and he's come off the bench and has played well in that kind of role. But from to be the guy starting out a year, finishing an entire year, it hasn't happened a lot over his past few seasons. All right, Dave, speaking of training camp, we do have a little bit of news, basically the only Steelers news we have right now. The Steelers announced they will hold their 2020 training camp. We already knew it was not going to be in Latrobe. We now know it's going to be at Heinz Field. That's going to give them more room to work with, help avoid any conflict with the Pitt Panthers, who I assume will practice on the south side at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. So this is not brand new for Pittsburgh. The last 2 or 3 seasons, they've held a Family Fest, one training camp practice in Pittsburgh. Obviously, they're going to hold every practice now in Pittsburgh and at Heinz Field, I should say, so it's a little bit different there. But that will be the location of their 2020 training camp.
Obviously, it's way too early I guess too early on top of it to kind of speculate what it means for fans wanting to watch any practices this year. Whether or not they'll be open or not for practices is yet to be seen. You'd probably lean to saying that that's still probably not going to happen, that the move to Heinz Field was more related to the new social distancing kind of rules upon players' return and to best accommodate COVID-19 concerns when it comes to teams and training camp facilities, if you will. So with that said, look, there's a better chance of fans being allowed to watch a training camp practice at Heinz Field than there is at the UPMC Rooney Sports Facility there, sports complex. So with that, there is a little, I guess, excitement or optimism about maybe what might transpire. Now, a week from now or within the week, are we going to get a schedule that says, okay, training camp practice is open to the public as usual, just only at Heinz Field? Probably not.
Right.
But maybe if these concerns, subside a little bit more moving forward over the next month, maybe they will open up, for the regular kind of family fest, and maybe one other, maybe Friday night practice that would kind of be a substitute for what they do at Latrobe High School there, and maybe one more on top of that. I'm just spitballing. I'm just spitballing
Sure.
here and being hopeful, from a hopeful aspect. But at least you can accommodate fans at Heinz Field once again, a lot more easier than you could anywhere else other than Latrobe at that aspect. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Obviously I'm not expecting, like I said, them to come out and say, okay, training camp practices will be open, as usual, just a different location. I think that's asking a little bit much, but maybe you get one or two deeper into training camp there where fans can attend at Heinz Field. Because, look, you still got to bring personnel into Heinz Field to do all that. It's just not so easy as opening up the doors, and doing it. So, I'll let my optimism carry on a little longer.
Yeah, I'm hoping for maybe just one practice. If we can get one open practice, I'll take it at this point. And really, I think that you could do it. I mean, Western PA, we're in the green phase. Allegheny County, Pittsburgh is in the green phase. So restaurants are open and they have social distancing rules, half capacity and stuff like that. But at Heinz Field, I mean, even in a normal year like last year, I mean, Heinz Field was pretty empty for the fan practice. It might be 10,000 people there. So you can spread people out, I think, fairly easily. So if restaurants can open and barbershops and salons can be open and things like that, then I think you can have a fan practice. I don't think that's beyond the pale based on the current set of circumstances.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you just were right out in front with this and said, look, no fan interaction with players, unfortunately.
Of course,
right.
Which very little happened at that practice anyway. There really wasn't much fan interaction in those practices.
Right, and then if everybody's every other seat, type of deal, I think you could pull it off at least for a couple of practices, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. I think my goal is to see them hold at least 3 practices there open to the public at Heinz Field. So we'll see.
I hope so.
We'll see how close we get to Dave's goal there, which is an absolutely meaningless goal from the Steelers' standpoint.
If not, we're going to have to buy an expensive Steelers Depot drone to hover over Heinz Field.
Yeah, and I guess it's a perfect opportunity to put a shout-out to anybody that might own a Zeppelin.
Yeah, you're a little old school on that reference, Dave.
That goes back to A Christmas Story, right?
Yeah, right. You got the Zeppelin gift.
Yeah, anybody have any connections to the Goodyear blimp? That would be something. I don't know. Can maybe you get up on top of Mount Washington or ride the incline continuously?
Yeah, there you go.
And take a good set of binoculars. Maybe you can get. I don't know. Check the job board at Heinz Field and see if they're hiring any custodians or anything there, Alex. Get on it.
I hope so. But yeah, if we can get one practice, that'd be fantastic because I am seriously bummed that it's not going to be at Latrobe. I understand why. But anyway, speaking
what do you think they're going to do with the media throughout this and really league wide? If I lived in and covered a team in a city where the media was just shut out, I would be pretty hot if there was another team in the league that was allowing kind of full media access.
Well, I mean, I think that could be a little dependent on just the circumstance of the virus place to place. If it's really severe in one place, there may be more restrictions than another place. I think there'll be media access in Pittsburgh. It may be less people. Obviously, they're going to have to practice some social distancing, and player interviews may look different. I'm not sure how that's going to go. They're going to have to probably change the landscape of how those things work. But I imagine there will be some sort of media presence. As I said before, though, I wonder what the information will be, because there won't be fans for, I assume, at least the majority of these practices. And like the regular season, these media guys have to keep a lid on things when there aren't fans around to report on this stuff.
Obviously, they're probably not going to be media scrums, if you will, after practices and all. I mean, will they be? Do you think they'll be forced to do most of this via virtual Zoom? I mean, overall, you would just think that it's going to lessen the amount of total interviews.
Yeah, I would imagine
pre and post practice, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be one of those things where you just go up to a guy after practice and start talking to him. I mean, it's going to be, these three guys are available this day. They're going to be at this location. They're going to be 6 feet apart from the media. That's probably going to be the landscape of it, but we'll see. We don't have a lot of information right now, unfortunately.
Well, this just goes back to what we kind of said, a while ago. This offseason just been, sucky.
Yeah, it just sucked.
From a fan perspective and all, and boy, here's the hoping that we're not, things are back to whatever kind of normal as normal as they can be a year from now, right?
Yeah, really hoping so. All right, speaking of the lack of normalcy, the NFL has posted a memo for players to return to team facilities as facilities have opened up. Right now, it's still just players who are rehabbing, and coaches can be at their team facility. No more than 100 people total in the building. The league has issued several protocols. I'm not even sure. I don't have a list of them all, but basically just trying to keep locker rooms like every other locker and all these kind of distancing rules, which I understand. It's well-intentioned, but kind of silly for football players that just spent 2 hours blocking and tackling on the field. But the NFL has a list of mandates and protocols for clubs to return to their facilities once they go full.
Yeah, look, I understand. Look, I know the Players Association is saying that they haven't approved anything yet as far, they want to make it as safe as possible for players to return and make sure, the guidelines and protocols all help that aspect of it. But when it comes down to it, this is a contact sport, right? Blocking and tackling and being in each other's faces in the huddles. How are you going to do that in huddles? That's going to make one hell of a huddle there if you have to practice 6 foot social distancing there. It just, the absurdity now, I think at this point. And look, you look at what's happening in our world with the protest and all like that right now. On top of it, how much social distancing is going on with that? I understand it's a different world that we live in now, but I mean, look, you either going to have to allow some closer sense of normalcy here, or not much at all. Kind of thing. And I think it is kind of ridiculous to have some of these guidelines in place, yet you're going to go out and you're literally exchanging breath with these guys, 3 inches across from you on the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are some things about, cleaning and disinfecting and all that can be very helpful. So well-intentioned, but it feels like these are more suggestions and they're going to be pretty difficult to follow. But that's another reason why this team's moving to Heinz Field for camp, because to do that in the South Side, a smaller facility with the Pitt Panthers, logistically would have been very difficult. So I think it's another reason why they decided to move to Heinz Field to have their own location, basically.
I mean, are they all going to have to wear face shields now too? Over
I think it said masks are encouraged in non-athletic activities. So like outside of practice, I don't know if it's a mandate, but I think it's encouraged to wear masks basically if you're inside the building, not practicing.
No, what I mean is face shields on helmets.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't think that was in the mandate. I don't think, but some players may opt for that.
Where are you at on the absurdity level here? Based on what we have seen transpire these last couple of weeks, also, with the protest and all like that.
Well, yeah, I think there's a real concern there for a rise in cases, and you have to weigh that versus, the people's will to protest. I don't think the NFL the NFL doesn't have to sit there and say, well, there's a lot of protests going on, so we don't need to have any restrictions or mandates. I don't think they have to, be beholden to what's going on in the world. I still think you can do safe things, and you're still responsible for trying to keep your players as safe as possible. So I understand what the NFL is doing here. Again, it's well intentioned. They're being cautious and as safe as really possible right now. But it is kind of funny because, as we just talked about, these players are going to be playing games and in practice and right next to each other. And you can only do so much to try to avoid the risks.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at there, and especially going back once again to the what the sport calls for as far as interaction there. But look, we learn as we go, right? And we'll see what we learn as we go. My biggest fear now at this point is and obviously I'm not alone in this is the country, as a whole, just going backwards. The world, going backwards with this thing. This virus didn't go anywhere, right?
Right. The tough part is just, and I don't mean to get in a tangent here, but just the change in information. Like I just saw a report today, because there was a report yesterday that the WHO said that asymptomatic people, it's very rare for them to be able to transmit the disease, which seems like great news. If you're not, visibly sick and really feeling sick, it seems like you have no chance to really transmit it. Now they just said today that up to like 40% of people that are asymptomatic can transmit the disease. So it's just hard to get facts on this stuff to really know what direction to take and what risks to take and what's appropriate and not. So that's been the really difficult part. And I understand it's medicine and this stuff changes based on studies, and it's hard to be 100% and you just have to kind of roll with the punches. But man, it's hard to know the basic facts to figure out the answers for those things.
Right.
So anyway, we'll keep you posted. I think that Tom Pelissero said, this was a tweet yesterday, said no date set yet and no mini camps expected, but the NFL and NFLPA are discussing the possibility of certain players such as rookies and veterans who change teams and need physicals returning to club facilities on a limited basis before June 26th per sources. So maybe by the end of the month, some teams will be able to get some players, aside from ones rehabbing, into the building, which will be a nice first step.
Yeah, and I think that's when you're looking at possibly seeing these, especially when it comes to the Steelers, getting some of these rookie contracts done for these draft picks and all, right? Because they are one of look, they're not the only team right now at this point that is yet to sign any other draft picks, and that's likely because they're waiting to give these guys physicals and all. So
right, because you have to pass a physical for them to still sign the contract.
Right. So I think that plays a part in that. Now there are other teams that have been able to get players signed and all. So, but I just think the Steelers just feel more comfortable in getting those, getting those physicals done, and I think we're going to start seeing that. Maybe by the end of this week, maybe by the start of next weekend.
Mm-hmm. Either way, still no concern. They'll be there for training camp, and that's really all that matters right now. Dave, you had a post yesterday or the other day on the Steelers' low air miles this year, so they will not catch many frequent flyer miles on their card, but that's probably a good thing for them overall.
Yeah, and this is something that we kind of knew. One of these things that we knew going back to when the opponent list was known, which was right after the 2019 season, right? So it's not like this crept up on us. It's just finally somebody went through and actually calculated out the miles, which there's websites that allow you to do that and all. And I had previously done the Steelers number and surprisingly my number ended up matching, so we must have used the same calculation website there as what CBS Sports HQ had there. So in total, the Steelers are set to fly, and this includes I think this includes if they were to fly to Cleveland, which I think they normally take a bus, right?
The bus
to Cleveland, but just in case, went ahead and included it as if they were flying to Cleveland. 6,600 air miles for them in 2020, which is the second least in the league, which probably isn't overly surprising. And when you look at that list, the only the Ravens will fly fewer air miles than the Steelers, and then the two on the other side of the Steelers are the Bengals and the Browns. So,
so AFC North lucked out this year.
Right. So there you go. So obviously mostly related to those teams having similar schedules there. The Bengals at 29th overall will fly a little over 7,500 miles round trip. The Browns a little over 7,300. The Steelers at 6,600, and the Ravens are just a little bit less, bringing up the least at 6,420 air miles. Now, how big a deal is that? I mean, you look at the Steelers' longest trip that they'll take in 2020, which is nearly, I think, roughly a third of their air miles, and that's to Dallas. That round trip is a little over 2,100 miles there. So, not a lot of other time really spent in the air. Their second longest trip is obviously to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. And where was the thing? The thing about their their longest road trip, which is to Dallas, it's off their bye week. And that's in week 9 when they travel to play the Cowboys, and that weekend they'll log, like I said, 2,134 air miles round trip to Dallas and back. Now, here's something that's interesting. The last time that the Steelers played the teams in both the NFC East and the AFC South as part of their regular season schedule was in 2008. And they finished 12-4 with a 12-4 record, and they went on to win the Super Bowl, of course, that year. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. I'm looking back at past years. I don't know what the number was for air miles in 2019. In 2018, I think they traveled pretty far. I don't know what the total number ended up being. In 2017, I think they only had to travel just about 6,800 miles in 2017. So, yeah, it seems to kind of be every other year for this team just based on the schedule. So, again, it's a small benefit, but I think a benefit nonetheless.
Yeah, look, less you have those airplane legs, kind of being cooped up or whatnot. So I think it means a little something. How much in the grand scheme of things? Probably not much, but it's something that's tracked every year regardless. And you'd rather probably the team not be on the plane,
right?
more than less, right? So. Mm-hmm.
Plus, it gives us a good excuse to use the photo of the Steelers playing, which always makes me smile. I do like that.
But now obviously, I think they had lost kind of their own personal
a couple years ago
charter there. So now obviously that's an older photo. But right now, with the airlines kind of hurting, you would think they might be clamoring to get kind of maybe that contract there. So maybe we'll see them back in a kind of a team plane, if you will, in 2020.
Right. All right, Dave, we are about to start our position-by-position analysis, which means we are heading close to the start of training camp and the season. But anything else you wanted to talk about, any other topics you wanted to touch on before we dive into that conversation?
I wrote up a lot about what we talked about the other day on the podcast about Cameron Heyward. I finally got it. There's so much foolish speculation going on out there, mostly on other blogs, about what may or may not happen with Cameron Heyward. I had enough of it finally on Monday, and I wrote a pretty detailed post about why probably Cameron Heyward doesn't have a contract extension yet, why I think it's foolish to speculate that he won't have that he won't have one come the start of the regular season. Is there anything in that post whatsoever that you would disagree with?
No, none.
All right, well, that was simple.
It's a short conversation. But yeah, it's basically you just wrote basically what the conversation we had on Friday show that there's still every expectation and reason to believe he will get a contract extension before the start of the year. The fact that they haven't talked much lately should not set up any red flags for a deal not getting done.
Absolutely, and the thing is, if for some reason my prediction turns out to be wrong, and he doesn't have a new contract by the start of the regular season, then that obviously means it's going to be one of those to be determined situations after the 2020 season takes place. And are you really telling me that you want to get into a position where A, you have to do your best to get him signed long term in that period after the season ends and prior to the franchise tag, which we all know the likelihood of getting a deal done with a player who's reached that stage, especially one, high profile, high dollar, is really slim and none. When's the last time that you've seen such a deal, especially when it comes to the Steelers, transpire in that period of time?
That would be a good research topic. I know Ramon Foster's done it.
But we're not talking about big name, high dollar either. We're talking about.
Well, yeah, but you just said the last time I have an instance, and that's probably the.
No, I did quantify that though with high dollar, high profile.
Okay. Sorry, there's a train rolling by. I don't know. It's probably been pretty rare, so that would be a concern if it doesn't happen. But I still believe that I'm still like 90% confident Hayward will get an extension before the year begins.
And then stemming off of that, let's assume that he didn't get a new deal this offseason, and then no new deal was struck between the end of the season and the franchise tag deadline. Man, you want to really limit your possibilities by having to use the franchise tag on Cam Heyward. What if Juju has a bounce back season in 2020, and then you had the hopes of at least we can franchise tag Juju and maybe get him signed long term instead of let him reach free agency. You only have one tag, right? And it's just hard to fathom. Overall, Cameron Heyward being in a position where you would have to tag him. And the other thing is just what this whole thing boils down to. What it would, and the way I kind of ended the post here. Honestly, can any of you really imagine Hayward not being part of this Steelers 2021 defensive line as we sit here in early June of 2020? And in my opinion, that's what it really boils down to, and why it's foolish for anyone to write or say right now that Cam Heyward ultimately not having a new deal in place by the start of the 2020 regular season is smart speculation on their part, because it's just unfathomable. Obviously, the only thing that I think could change that is if an unfortunate injury were to strike Hayward kind of between now and the start of the regular season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just hard to see the reason for it not getting done. He's still in the prime of his career, playing at his highest level right now, a leader, a face of that defense, a great guy off the field. He clearly wants to be here. The Steelers definitely want him to stick around long term. So, again, every reason to believe it'll happen. Yeah, I'm pretty tired of reading. I've read articles this week on why Cam Heyward should get traded and why Juju should get traded by other teams, and I'm tired of this offseason boredom nonsense.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Some of these guys, and the problem is a lot of the fan base will read some of this stuff and kind of take it as, gospel because it is printed on the internet,
Yeah, so it must be true.
So it must be true. And, this kind of stems into kind of what, I think Ed Bouchette kind of put in a chat the other day, talking about Ben Roethlisberger and, wouldn't be some, the way you kind of get it framed after the point, I understand what he was doing. He said he wouldn't, in so many words, he was saying he wouldn't be surprised if Ben signed another deal, a new deal after the 2020 season, assuming everything, goes well with him with his health in 2020. Well, that automatically is kind of spun into, as in news, as Ben will likely sign a new deal after the 2020 season. No, that's not what he's saying. He's speculating here that he could see that being the case. And right now, I don't see how anybody could speculate Ben's future past 2020 right now. Obviously, we all hope he returns to form. Look, I mean, this is a guy that I'd be willing to plop down a pretty decent amount on the odds of him possibly winning comeback player of the year. Right now where we stand, in 2020. But no, you got to know that no decision on Roethlisberger's part and no decision on the Steelers' part has been made as to whether or not, another extension will take place for him after the 2020 season. On top of it, look, I know it sounds good, Ben playing well into his 40s, but what do you really think the realistic possibilities of that are of happening?
I think it's possible. I just want to get through this year, though. I just want him to finish his rehab right now and come back and see how he looks and feels and plays and how he feels after the season. Those are all going to be important factors in determining his future. So I know that's just speculation from Bouchette. Sometimes outside media outlets will run with that too much and take it too far from what Bouchette might be saying or implying or speculating there. But I just want to get through 2020 first and then hopefully have that conversation after the season.
Where you sit right now, where will Ben sign an extension next offseason?
I mean, I don't know. My guess is no, but again, it's the pointless speculation right now because it's all going to be based off the things I just talked about, how he feels, how he plays week to week after the season when he gets to rest and just the state of his arm and his future. So my only expectation right now is that he will be playing through 2021, and beyond that, I'm just in a wait and see mode.
All right, fair enough. Tell us a little bit about Mose Kelch.
Well, Kelch, yeah. It is just a short video. I actually wrote about Mose Kelch like 5 years ago. I want to do a video version of it with a couple new pieces of content. But he was the Steelers and NFL's first kicker back in 1933, 1934, when they were still called the Pittsburgh Pirates. He grew up playing sandlot football with the Rooneys on their semi-pro type teams before Rooney bought the franchise in 1933, and just was like 36 years old, was kind of fat, and just couldn't block and be a runner like he used to be in his younger days. And so he became a kicker, basically, the first true specialist recognized in football history. And just some cool fun facts with him. Also, a Steelers media guide gets a fact wrong with him. They say he went to the school Christian. His name was Christian. He never went to college. So a weird quirk in the Steelers media guide that's always kind of humoring me. But it's a very short video, about 2 minutes. You can check it on Steelers Depot. That's just a little bit of history and a Pittsburgh lore.
I wanted to see if you remembered. I was doing more reading and that's really interesting info that you were able to dig up on that. I assume you got some of it from newspapers.com or no?
Most of it from newspaper. There's that, and there's one article in the Pro Football American Researchers Coffin Corner magazine that kind of talks about that stuff.
I am trying to pull up the 1994 draft, and I came across this yesterday in a newspaper article, and I drew a blank on who this player was. I cannot for the life of me remember this player at all. Tease. It would be one of these names, wouldn't it? Fuamua, a defensive end out of Hawaii that the Steelers drafted in 1994, I believe in the fourth round at 122nd overall. I am just drawing a complete blank on him. Do you remember reading or seeing anything on him at all?
No, I'm just looking him up now. He only played 8 games. All in Pittsburgh, recorded 2 tackles according to Pro Football Reference, so it seems like a very, very brief career for him.
Yeah, I don't remember him at all, and it's hard to find much of any. I think there was a couple of kind of training camp stories on him in the paper, in the local papers at around that time, but really nothing since then. I want to. My goal now is to go back and watch some snaps that he actually played. But 1994, I was obviously. Yeah, look, I was. I didn't have, obviously didn't have the information flow that do now, but obviously was, kind of knew what was going on with the Steelers. But that was a name that I came across in an article on newspapers.com. I was like, who the hell was that? I was really drawing a blank on, and I don't think you can even find any pictures of him really in a Steelers jersey either. Out there on the internet. So I just found that interesting that I came across because obviously I'm doing a lot of research right now. As part of Steelers' offensive big plays spanning back over to 50 years, we've hit the Cordell Stewart slate of that series and all now, and I think there's going to be at least 2 more posts today, and I think the previous 2 included Cordell Stewart, and I think we got 2 more on tap today that'll include Cordell being part of big plays.
Mm-hmm. Any plays you forgot about, or any ones that are kind of your favorite as you've gone? You're what now, almost 30 years into this series.
I think I had forgotten and needed a little refresher on that catch that he made against the Bengals down the middle of the field. A couple. When was that? Just recently. It was 92, I think. I'm trying to remember the exact. I guess it would have been Cordell's rookie season, right?
Let me look it up.
That'd be 95, I think. Then.
Yeah, O'Donnell to Stewart for 71 yards against the Bengals.
Right, 95.
Yeah,
I kind of had forgotten that one. And that was, what a weird game I think that one was, thinking back. I think the Steelers had to come from behind on that one there and scored, several unanswered points there after falling behind at one point there. So just, I would expect a lot of these plays to include Cordell Stewart here as we get into the latter part of the 90s here.
Yeah, and then the early 2000s will be interesting too. I wonder what the biggest play in like 2000, 2001, because I could not tell you off the top of my head what those ones even could be.
I think in early 2000, didn't you have the long one against the Ravens? Who was it? Was it Cordell to Thigpen? Was it? If I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that was going to be there in the early 2000s there. Look, I mean, a lot of these are runs. In fact, I think we got another long run coming up today. I think where I left off yesterday was the long run against the Panthers in that game, and I think you got another long run today coming against I think it was the Bengals.
All right. Well, looking forward to the rest of that series as we head into the new century. All right, Dave, we mentioned quarterbacks earlier. Again, we're doing our position-by-position evaluation. Things will be tougher this year with limited or potentially no camp access, but we do want to talk about the quarterback group and what we're expecting from this summer and from the preseason. At least we do get 5 preseason games, so that is a nice substitute for the lack of training camp. So starting with quarterback with Ben, again, I'm very curious to see what their training camp preseason approach is going to be with him. Are they going to continue to ease him in? Is he going to work less than he was pre-surgery? Is he going to work more than he was pre-surgery to try to knock the rust off and really truly see how that elbow feels? It'll be very interesting to see what their approach with him is this summer, because I don't know what the thought's going to be.
Boy, as long as they carry the amount of quarterbacks that they have on the roster right now, you would have to think it's really going to be he's going to be eased in, even more so. In other words, a lighter. Especially early, a lighter practice workload than maybe even normal with him,
Mm-hmm. But there's probably a point where they need to ramp things up because he's got to test it out. He's got to test that arm out.
Right, and I assume right now he's starting to let it loose. Look, we still haven't heard about last weekend and whether or not Ben was part of whatever offensive get-together that they had in Pittsburgh. I would like to think that happened, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You get you get Eric Ebron in town like that. You would think that some sort of practice with Roethlisberger probably took place then, right?
I would hope so, but I wish. Yeah, I don't have any confirmation of that.
Yeah, but obviously, look, you have at some point you're going to have to turn him loose.
Exactly.
And the thing is I don't know how fortunate you can look at this situation as being with there not being the OTA sessions and obviously the mandatory minicamp this summer. At least there's less opportunity for maybe Ben to kind of reach back and want to show people what his fastball looks like, and maybe do himself some damage. Not that I think he would have done that anyway, but kind of less of consecutive maybe wear and tear. Not that would have even happened in a 3-day setting, if you will, or 4-day setting of whatever practice that you had together there. So, look, that's above our pay grade as far as how they handle him and his rehab and the amount of work that he gets, that he does on a daily basis. But on the flip side, there's no reason to overdo it, especially right now at this time, getting into training camp. You obviously want to start ramping it up more and more, but it will be interesting to see the overall, how different maybe that is compared to what he normally gets in a training camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's got to rip it a couple times before we get into week one. His first time opening it up cannot be week one Monday night against the Giants. He's got to be able to feel comfortable with that. The team has to feel comfortable with that. And if you have to ease him in, you have to be smart about it, sure. But if you get to a point where you're just scared of him hurting himself or worried about the wear and tear, then he's just not ready, and that's going to be a big problem because you can't have that concern heading into the season and while you're actually playing games that count and matter. So they're going to have to open things up and ramp things up at some point. It does not have to be today. It does not have to be the first day of camp, but at some point he's got to get into stadiums in preseason and throw a couple deep balls. I mean, he's got to do those things to earn trust in himself too. He's got to be able to trust that arm and feel comfortable as well. And that's a big battle, not only from the team standpoint, from his own mental standpoint. He's got to be confident and trust his arm that he's fully healthy.
Luckily, he's got a lot of the normal pieces coming back in the offense there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you would like to see him get some work with a guy like Ebron and of course the younger wide receiver in Claypool, and really some of those other younger guys that he really hasn't thrown to.
Deontay, brand new. Basically.
Right. I mean, a lot of those guys, came in, after he was on IR last year. Guys like Kareth White too. Deion Kane. Just that aspect of it, and it makes you wonder with the team having, or at least currently, we'll see if it stays that way. Currently scheduled 5 preseason games. Will he get maybe a little extra work in one of those games that maybe normally he wouldn't? So it's all going to be speculation on our part, until we actually kind of see that stuff. But it's definitely one thing that I don't think we'll get the Alex Kozora reports of how many passes he threw, and
I just was going to bring that up.
That kind of thing, to be able to compare it, to who knows, maybe somebody in the media will surprise us.
Oh. I appreciate your optimism, Dave. That's not going to happen. Ben threw 142 passes in camp last year.
Wow.
I don't know. So, I mean, that again was their general schedule of full day, half day, off day, which I imagine will probably be about their approach this year. But I don't want it to be any less than that. He's going to have some full days where he gets to test that arm out, throw 25 passes in a practice, and then not only to see if he can do it and not feel tired or fatigued or experience any sort of pain during that time, but also the next day how he feels and if there's pain, whenever he starts recovering and his body's hurting a little bit. So 142 passes last year. He's probably going to be around that same number this year, and I think he needs to be. I think he has to open things up, and you can't play scared. There's got to be a point where you say, okay, he's crossed every threshold, he's passed every test of the rehab, now he's back, he's normal, and we're going to proceed like normal.
How do you preview a position? We're obviously going to go position group by position group here, but previewing a position group where your starter has been part of this thing for as long as he has been and coming off of a serious injury. I think there's a lot of Captain Obvious involved in such a preview there. Obviously, you want him to get through this part of the later stage of the rehab, and be able to show that he can make several of the throws that he's used to having to make or has made in the past. And to hear Kevin Colbert and all talk, they think there's a chance that he might even be even better, than he was pre-injury. And we don't really know how long overall, maybe that injury kind of affected him. Especially maybe his deep passes and all like that. So, I think it goes back to kind of what we said. Until we have any reason to be concerned about Roethlisberger as he embarks on, his post-injury season, then there's, we should expect kind of what we've seen over the most recent years with him. Now, obviously, I think a big component to Ben Roethlisberger and his success in 2020 needs to start early in the season with him being able to connect, or at least have the accuracy aspect of the deep pass. You go back to 2018 season where, for whatever reason, just wasn't on target. A lot of balls just fly, a lot of deep balls, A, off target, and B, some of those off targets were 3 feet out of bounds, where even if the receiver would have caught them, they would not have counted. Now, obviously, he got those straightened out during the second half of the season there. But make no mistake that this offense has still got to have that big play element to it, something that we didn't get a lot of, at least down the field last season, because of once Roethlisberger went to the sidelines in the second game of the season there. So his ability to be able to push the football down the field is the biggest concern element I think there is right now when it comes to Roethlisberger and post injury here. Mm-hmm. We know that we've seen in fact, you go back and you look at the 2018 season with Roethlisberger, it's okay to label that kind of a dink and dunk kind of season. It was what it was. And it worked. I mean, look, you had a lot of field to cover during that season as well, too, because of the field position. That plays into the point of why he had to throw for so many yards, why there were so many pass attempts. And look, he obviously didn't have the defense, that this in 2018 that this team had in 2019 is expected to have in 2020 either. So I guess what I'm getting at is one of the biggest things to previewing the 2020 quarterback position, and specifically Roethlisberger, is wanting to be able to see right out of the chute, can he be able to push the football down the field with accuracy?
Right. Yeah, and he's got to build up chemistry with these young guys. You mentioned Deontay Johnson completed 7 passes to him last year, camp, preseason, and regular season. James Washington, I mean, he threw, obviously his rookie year, but Washington's a much different player last year, a much better player last year, so it'll be kind of new to throw to the new and improved James Washington consistently. Obviously, Eric Ebron, Deion Kane, as you said, some of the running backs, Benny Snell, Kareth White. So that'll be a little different for him because it's a season loss with a lot of new pieces involved.
What is your biggest fear about him?
That his elbow is just not the same, that he had a major surgery and it feels good right now, but after going through some practices and some games and taking some shots in the regular season, that elbow just feels like it's in pain and won't be the same, and he either doesn't have the same trust and confidence in it or just physically just didn't take, because it is a severe surgery even with the modern medicine capability today. So that is my biggest concern. If he's pain-free and feels good, I think we'll see the old Ben, but that's the one thing that could obviously hold him back.
And I think the last thing that even though it looks good from a statistical standpoint, last thing we want to see him have to do is throw for 6,000 yards.
Right.
Right?
600 passes, yeah. I mean, I think you want to be mindful of that. And obviously, if you're throwing that much, that means you're probably down or your run game's not working. You have a bunch of long fields that this team had 2 years ago. So, just as a standard, surgery or not, you don't want your quarterback throwing 600-plus times.
Instant upgrade, obviously, with his return, and the red zone in particular, right? I mean, we hope to. Will it hit the levels that we saw this offense at in 2018? Red zone percentage? I mean, I think that's asking a little bit much, right? But
it was a historic number in 2018.
I mean, I think expectations should be at least sniffing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's every reason to believe they can be top 5. I mean, they were number 1 in 2018. They were number 32 in 2019. I can't paint a starker contrast of life with Ben versus life without him than the red zone numbers. So certainly capable of being at least around a top 5 club in the red zone is my hope and expectation.
And you'd like to see, an interception or 4 less for Roethlisberger?
That'd be nice. That was the weird thing about 2018 was that Ben led the league in red zone interceptions, yet the Steelers were by far and away the number 1 red zone offense. So kind of crazy.
And I think a lot of those were forced footballs to Antonio Brown.
Remember the Falcons game 2018, just kind of threw that lame duck that got picked off.
Right. I think, what did he have?
I think 4.
Yeah, 4 is the
4.
number that I want to that first comes to mind as well, too. And how much of maybe was that of him kind of, having AB in his ear all the time.
Yeah, AB.
But look, he definitely has the weapons, I think, to be out as long as Juju's healthy and Washington's healthy and obviously Deontay's healthy. We saw a couple years ago how effective a guy. James Conner's not Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield, But he did some good things, a couple years ago when used quite a bit out of backfield. I think you could use him in that aspect. Obviously, Ebron is going to bring another different kind of element to this offense. And then, McDonald. And I think people forget, going back a couple years ago, how many passes Vance McDonald caught, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he had a really impressive 2018 season before everything went to crap last year. So I don't think he'll have the same production because we'll be splitting more with Ebron. But if you could combine Ebron and Vance this year and say, can they hit Vance's numbers of 2018, I think that's certainly possible.
All right. What else? I mean, this guy we've talked about for years and years in Roethlisberger. I think everybody kind of has a similar kind of stance when it comes to previewing him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, for the first time, it's a longer conversation this year because usually past years you go, Ben's fine. All right, moving on to the backups. But this year we do have more to talk about with him. Speaking of backups, Mason Rudolph, obviously the number 2, been declared by the team since the day last year ended. Mike Tomlin said Mason's the backup next year, and they have a lot of confidence in him, and that's fair, I guess. But that confidence has to be earned because it is yet to happen.
This goes back to kind of what we've said all offseason with him. We hope not to see much of Mason Rudolph in 2020 because if we do, either the Steelers are getting a lot of blowouts situations or B, something has happened to Ben there. So that's number one. And so I think you back it up even farther when it comes to a guy like Mason Rudolph and back to what we've said that this summer, really starting in about, I guess it would be 5 to 6 weeks from now, really becomes the most important stage for Mason Rudolph. The guy really has to look good throughout the summer and on into whatever amount of work that he gets during preseason, which I think we both agree should be a lot overall because obviously one snap away from being in the game. You go back and you think back about the things that Mason did good and awful last year. I go back and I think about that game against Miami and him not having a great start, but yet getting through all the adversity that comes with the fan base turning on him and him just not playing well and then really kind of settling down, if you will, and having an okay game, and then you fast forward through what he had to deal with not having a lot of those weapons there, a lot of moving parts, a lot of, the offense really kind of getting in a situation where just don't lose the game for us, I think. And then, look, there were situations, you go back to a couple of the safeties in general, you would think, okay, not a big deal, just gave up a safety there. But when you dig further into those plays, you find the mistakes that he made and how some of those could have been avoided there. The one particular one on him, got to trust Deontay Johnson, just get that ball out, let the receiver either make the play or drop it. Kind of situation there. You fast forward on into the season with him missing a guy like Johnny Holton coming across the middle of the field, just missing stuff like that. And then of course you get into the absolute train wreck of what was the game against the really kind of started a little bit before that when you look, or no, after that, when you look at the train wreck against the Browns and you kind of wonder how all that might have played out had a guy like Holton caught a couple of deep balls in that game, that he probably should have. And then the bad decisions of him just getting in what to me looked like a pressing. I've got to get through this. I got to will myself through this, and looking like he pressing too hard at the end of that Browns game and on into the next game where the wheels just completely came off the cop car at that point going over the railroad tracks. You look at that final throw that was at the feet of Deontay Johnson on the left side. That was the moment where you knew they had to do something. At that point. And then, you get into the whole, Devlin Hodges stage, and then, fast forward to him in the game coming off the bench against the Jets, and you had reason for optimism, I think, at that point. And then you're in another what if scenario. What if Mason Rudolph had been able to stay healthy and finish out that game against the Jets? Would the Steelers have won it? Would it have made a difference in the week, the following week, in the game against the Ravens? At that point there. So there's still a lot of unknowns, I think, about Mason Rudolph from top to bottom, with a lot more negative stuff that you kind of winced seeing, being he was technically a second-year quarterback last season.
If I had to put together a list of the 5 Steelers who most need to have a really impressive camp/preseason, Mason Rudolph is easily on that list. He may even be in the top 3 of guys who need to have that kind of preseason. It's sink or swim for Mason Rudolph, Dave. I mean, this guy has to show that he is the first-round grade the Steelers claim to have had on him, and that he can be not only the backup to Ben, but still the potential heir to Ben. Because if he can't show it this year in his 3rd year, after taking all his lumps in 2019, then you're probably never going to see it. At least it's hard to be confident about that. So I want to see better pocket presence from him. First of all, that's the first thing. That's the biggest thing. He was terrible in the pocket, running into pressure way too often, taking too many sacks that were on his own fault, not the offensive line's fault last year. I want to see him be more aggressive downfield, take more chances, take more risk. I think he showed that a little bit more as he got comfortable later in the last year, but I want to see that from day one. I want to see obviously more consistency. I want to see fewer turnovers. He had 7 interceptions in camp last year. That's a number that's way too high for that kind of setting where you're not going to get hit and sacked. So I just need to see more consistency across the board from him. And so, like I said, this is a huge 6-week span once they start camp for Mason Rudolph.
I think in today's NFL, when it comes to quarterback play and being the difference between being a good quarterback that gets a lucrative contract to one that can win a Super Bowl, Tom Brady aside, because I think Tom Brady's kind of the last of the stand in the pocket, kind of guy. I mean, let's admit it. I mean, Tom Brady's never been kind of an off-script quarterback, right?
Of course. I think he's got great mobility within the pocket, but obviously he's not fleet of foot.
Right. Now, obviously, pocket movement inside the pocket, you're right. I mean, that guy's almost like watching a video game the way it's like Frogger. That's probably before your time, Frogger. But the kind of the back and forth and over and, aspect there. I'm not so much worried about that, although you'd like to see that a little bit, obviously a little bit better than what it is with Mason Rudolph. I think successful quarterbacks in the NFL, what sets them apart from being the give me a middling quarterback that earns a nice contract that not elite right now. I mean, I know there's a handful of them, obviously now.
Like a Nick Foles kind of guy?
Maybe I don't know who's in Minnesota.
Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, maybe a Cousins type.
Okay.
You got to be able to go off script. You got to be able to extend plays, I think. And obviously that's something that Ben was able to do a lot during his career, really still does. And we hope we'll be able to continue to still be able to do. The ability for that play to happen more than 3.5 seconds after the ball is snapped.
Mm-hmm.
Mason, we have never really, we saw bits and pieces of that at times at Oklahoma State, but really coming out, that was not something that you're looking at a scouting report and you're saying, okay, this guy makes plays off script. Okay.
Right.
The fact that you can remember like 4 instances specifically that he did it that long ago from Oklahoma State probably is the reason why you think, well, he didn't do it a lot, because you only remember those 3 or 4 times there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to have to show that he can have that kind of element to him.
But I mean, he's not an athletic guy. Like, he's going to be a pocket passer most of the time in the NFL.
Sure. But there still are going to be, I think, successful. You have to be able to make those plays at certain aspects in games.
Sure. I agree, but I think he's got to make plays within the pocket first because that's who he is, and that's where he's still struggling right now. So
but I do think that we saw him start to do, at least, in that Jets game, there was, and it's understandable why Kevin Colbert kind of keeps pointing to that game as well too. I think if you go back, I think there's a lot of things in that game against the Jets to have optimism about when it comes to Mason Rudolph potentially maybe turning that corner.
I half agree. I mean, it was a good performance, and I wish we could have seen more. And it's disappointing we didn't when he injured. Was that a collarbone? Broke his collarbone?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we just didn't see a lot of it. I mean, there's just a small subset of plays. But I mean, within those plays, there was reason to have the optimism there.
There was, but I don't want to get so focused on one half of how do you play a quarter? What did that guy? I mean, he played like a quarter, right? Because Duck started and Mason came in after him and got injured early in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. Is that basically what happened? So they do play a quarter, which he played well, but we have a whole season basically. We have how many starts did he make last year? 10 starts last year to go off of, and I don't want to let one quarter that was good make us forget about all the issues that led him to getting benched to that point.
Sure, but that's why I said there's reason to have some optimism there based on off of that play against the Jets.
Yeah, I think even Colbert does it. I think puts a little too much stock in that performance, to be honest. I just think looking big picture, he was on that roller coaster all year. Like he played, there were times in the season where he played well. Seattle, he played well coming in his first appearance, but he's got to get more consistent. I mean, that's the issue with him.
I think, and once again, this goes back to kind of what I said mid-season there. I really think he got to a situation where he was pressing way, way too much.
I agree.
But I think that took away from his mechanics and his ability to see the field. I just think he thought you put so much pressure on yourself in those situations, you let some of the other things that made you the kind of player that you are not happen.
Sure.
Look, you go back and look. He obviously came out of college as an RPO spread quarterback. Not having to think, it was a lot more if this then this kind of situation. And look, you played against those defenses playing off a lot, and and obviously the talent that they had at Oklahoma State on the offensive side of the ball there too, which was fun to watch. It made his job a lot easier there. And now you're in the NFL. Now you got to be able to read these defenses here. You got to be able to. You got to have those tight window throws, on occasion. Something that he, has shown a little bit of, but not a lot of. And I can't help but keep going back with him, Alex, and thinking about what would have happened in that Browns game had some of those balls that were very catchable had been caught. Well, would that, how would that have changed the time-space continuum, if you will? Because, admit it, there were some nicely placed balls in that game before the cop car went over the train tracks.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, Johnny Holton could not catch a cold all season, including that game.
Now, when they came off, they came off. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and that's what I hate to keep going back to that throw against the Bengals. To
or the Browns game, that 4th and 1 to Holton, where it just. I mean, that should have been a completion. That should have been almost a touchdown, and it wasn't.
When you see things like that, that's then lack of confidence. Then at that point, and it's hard to even evaluate a guy at that point because he's so gun shy at that point. He's like when you're focusing more on not making a mistake than you are making a play, and that's what clearly it looked like at that point. Mm-hmm. Now, will he bounce back from all this? I mean, look, you throw in all the accusations, coming from the Myles Garrett. I mean, that kid went through a lot in his second season now.
He's mentally tough. I'll give him that. That's his best trait. This dude is mentally tough.
Well, I don't think we know that yet.
You don't think? I think he should.
No, I don't think you do, because all you really have is just that quarter or quarter and a half or whatever it was against the Jets. So, I think we're going to, and this goes back to what we've said about him now in this summer with him. This guy's got to go out there and look like one of the top 3 or 4 I think the expectation should be that this guy goes out there and says, man, where was this kid at? You know, he's got to look like after the preseason, we should be talking about is Mason Rudolph one of the top 5 backup quarterbacks in the NFL? You know, that's the optimism that we should have even against furniture movers with him.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think it largely starts with pocket presence and mechanics, and he's got the Shane Falco quicksand problem. Remember, have you ever watched the movie The Replacements? My favorite football/sports movie of all time. The more you fight, the more you sink, and he's got to be able to, not worry about that. You said he's probably pressing a bit too much. I still think he showed mental toughness, though, to go through all he went through last year and still have generally the same approach and fight. And everyone talked about how hard this guy worked. I think last year was adversity that's very rare for any quarterback to go through, much less a second-year guy in his first NFL action, essentially. And I got to give him props for that. That does not mean you're going to be a good player, but I think that mental toughness is one component that gives you at least a chance to get back in the fight.
And look, I mean, every time they play the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett moving forward, what's going to be the talk ahead of those games?
Yeah, I mean, the media will definitely drive that storyline. Now, obviously, Mason hopefully will not be starting those games, so it may be less of a storyline. It may be the B story to the main event. But, yeah, it's going to come up, absolutely.
As far as tangibles go, I think he still has them. Now, does he have them to be a bona fide starter, the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger? I mean, I think it's obvious, right? I mean, look, in general, players where they get drafted, especially at the quarterback position, you could usually look at those and say, well, you drafted outside the first 2 rounds. There's zero chance this guy's going to be a franchise quarterback, and zero chance he's going to win a Super Bowl. Just from draft position alone. Does he have? Do I still think he has? Or do I think he has the tangibles to be a very sufficient, at least backup and part-time starter? Yeah, I think he does, but he's got to. It goes back to he's got a lot to prove this summer and this summer only.
Agreed.
If you come out of this summer with still kind of wondering if this guy's even, if it's a difference between a second or a third string more so than a first and a second string, well then obviously, you need to start making plans elsewhere.
And they may, because it may be time to draft a quarterback in 2021, depending on how things go this year. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, Dave.
I still think ideally that you come out of the 2020 season thinking that maybe he still can, potentially be that guy. And I guess what I'm getting at is I still have my doubts about this team drafting a quarterback early in 2021.
Yeah, I don't think it's a guarantee by any stretch, but I think Mason will dictate, at least in part, the direction they take. Because if he face plants again, you're lacking a backup quarterback and you're lacking a long-term option, which may compel you to find someone in the draft. It's a big year. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean,
and look, it's unfortunate if we have to see much of him in 2020 on top of it. And look, if he does have to play, then you're really, I mean, you want to talk about how one of the caveats of 2019 season was, okay, well, at least we'll learn quite a bit about Mason Rudolph. All right. Well, we did. And now, obviously it wasn't, it wasn't Ben Roethlisberger 2004 rookie season, success when it comes to Rudolph. But there's still enough there that's got you wondering, well, what can he be moving forward here? So, we'll see. It's definitely in the we'll see mode, and hopefully we won't see a lot of it, in 2020.
Yeah, I'm not closing the book on him yet, but if he struggles again this year, then I'm probably going to close that book just because you can only wait so long in this league for guys to develop. All right, let's talk about Duck. And his crazy story, too, I mean, going this time a year ago, he was a UDFA from Sanford, tryout guy, $1,000 signing bonus to come into Pittsburgh, basically an afterthought, impressed with a great training camp, ends up getting cut, comes back when Ben gets hurt, and then when Mason goes down, Duck comes in, plays well initially, had a really good stretch there, and then things kind of fell apart the last month of the season. So that kind of sums up his season, and now he's battling for a roster spot with Paxton Lynch.
What do you define really good spurts or really good stretch with him being?
Let me look up the games. I mean, the Cardinals game was, I think, pretty good. I mean, just that stretch where they were winning when they got to 8-5, whatever that run was. I mean, it's not that Hodges was elite, but he was playing well enough for the team to win. I mean, he won. Yeah, he was 4-0 in his first. I guess the Bengals game wasn't a starter, but 4-0 in his first appearances after the Baltimore game. So, I mean. He was playing well enough to win there. He was taking care of the football until things collapsed, starting with that Buffalo game.
What were, when you think back about Hodges and his games played last season, what are the first maybe 3 or 4 positive throws of his that come to mind?
I mean, the first was that one to Deontay Johnson against Baltimore. I think it'd be the first attempt of his career. I mean, he goes in, changes the protection, forgets the word for it. Linemen are looking at him like, what the heck's going on? He gets everything set right, and he throws that strike on the out route to Deontay, which I think came on 3rd down. So I think about that one for sure. I just think about the gunslinger, fearless mentality in general that he had, and that was evident in camp right away. This guy's not going to play scared. He was kind of the opposite of Rudolph, where this guy was willing just to let it rip because the dude had nothing to lose. So that was the mentality he played with. It got him in trouble sometimes, but also kind of what made him get on the map in the first place.
When I think about positive throws with him, I think about obviously that first one that you mentioned there against the Ravens. I think in week 5 game. I think about
the James Washington one. He threw the one to James against Cincinnati.
Right. The long touchdown to Washington. There is one that comes to mind. I think kind of the off script, kind of extending the play against who was that, the Cardinals?
I think so. Yeah, I think you've referenced that one before.
And that was a night. Well, I think another thing that stuck out about that play is Johnson working back to the football on that. What was another positive element when it comes to that play. I think the touchdown in the corner of the end zone to Johnson. What was a good throw in that game. The other, I'm trying to think what other throws stick out to me past that, and I think that's it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, his first 4 games, I mean, even including the Baltimore game, the dude has thrown 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, and his completion percentage was around, rough math here, 70 or something percent. I mean, he was playing well enough for this team to win, and they were winning games.
A lot of those were short throws, though, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that Chargers game was just the one time he tried to throw it deep, he got picked off, I think, to Holton. But, I mean, the dude was managing the game, which is all he had to do. And then the Buffalo, Jets-Baltimore game, he threw 1 touchdown, 6 picks, and his completion percentage was like 50%.
Right. I think he's kind of. You want to talk about pocket presence as well too. He's kind of the reverse too. He's always kind of bailing out of the pocket, and I think that's something that you could kind of sense going back to him playing late in some of those preseason games that he played in. Right. Even though the protection wasn't great, he always and you go back to I think even his college tape at Sanford. He has that want to bail.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got to be able to play within the pocket. Something Mason has to, I think, work on too. The quarterbacks ran themselves into so much pressure last year. Let me pull up my sack charting and see how many sacks the quarterbacks were responsible for last year, Dave. It was a crazy high number. I'll have to get the exact data point for you guys. Rudolph was responsible for 3 sacks, and Hodges responsible for 4.5, which, based on my charting, is on the high end of things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes you wish you could combine the elements of the two. There were times where you kind of think that you'd want Rudolph to escape and bail the pocket, and then other times when you wanted to see Devlin Hodges maybe step up into it,
Right. They could just fuse the two together, Dragon Ball Z style. You'd have a decent quarterback, I think.
Right. I don't think I think just some of the physical limitations too with Devlin hurt him. with overall arm strength maybe. I like his gunslinger. Look, he had nothing to lose, and you want to talk about a player that kind of played with a lot more fearlessness than Rudolph last year. It was him.
Yeah, I mean, Duck. Again, like you said, the phrase is he just played with like nothing to lose because he had nothing to lose.
Right, but on the flip side, I think a lot, and look, he had a couple more turnover worthy throws than what actually got turned over. You go back to that game against Baltimore too. There was a deep, I think there was a deep throw in that game over down to the left side into the end zone. I think maybe to Deontay that probably should have been picked off.
Yeah. He got away with some, and that's the cost of doing business when you play with the mentality he has. There's no arguing that.
And I think we didn't see enough of him being able to push the football down the field with success.
He was willing to do it, but it didn't always get completed. Right,
whereas we did see Mason have some success down the field.
Well, I'm not sure who was more successful. I'd have to look. Neither were overly successful with a deep ball. I'd have to look at that data to see who was actually better, though, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm talking from an accuracy standpoint, but I think Mason had him there. But regardless, he is what he is, and that's, in my opinion, is a borderline number 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and he'll be battling with Paxton Lynch, and that's a guy that Kevin Colbert's talked up a lot as a guy with first-round pedigree. The Steelers love pedigree. I'm sure that the dude looked good in practice last year. I bet you he'll look good in camp when he's a former first-rounder who's got the height and the arm and can look good in that kind of setting. So he's got a good chance to take the number 3 job, I think.
And the thing is, we don't have anything to go on with him, with Paxton Lynch, other than kind of his play when he came into the league, right? This is a guy, though, that has the pedigree, a guy that washed out almost as quickly as he came into the league. I think the most intriguing, it's hard to do analysis on a guy that you haven't seen take a NFL snap in how long,
Yeah, a couple of years.
And I think we will see him in obviously in the preseason some. And he is a guy, I think the most intriguing aspect about Paxton Lynch right now with him being on this 90-man roster this summer is the way kind of Kevin Colbert lights up when he talks about him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he talks about just, the arm strength and the pedigree, and basically anytime they mention the backup quarterback situation, he always says, don't forget about Paxton Lynch. And the Steelers clearly, I think he's going to compete for a spot.
And that's hard for us to give a position analysis on a guy based on that, but it's really all we got.
Yeah, last NFL action, Week 17 of 2017, Denver versus Kansas City, a 27-24 Chiefs victory. Lynch went 21 for 31, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and was sacked 5 times.
I mean, how do you, I've made my thoughts known on this for a while now. I said that I expect Lynch to beat out Duck Hodges for the number 3 spot, and we'll see if that happens. But I mean, all I have to go on because of that is A, the pedigree with Lynch, and B, just to hear Kevin Colbert talk,
Yeah, I put Paxton on my 53 way too early roster prediction. I don't know if I would expect it. I just think it's whoever plays better in the preseason gets the job. It's truly just whoever earns it. But I think Paxton, for the reasons you stated, has a slight edge right now.
So we'll see how that plays out. It'll be interesting to see the rotation come the first couple preseason games, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another good reason they have 5 games to play, because those guys, Mason, Paxton, Duck, they're all going to need a lot of reps.
All right, JT Barrett, where does he factor into all this?
I mean, he's probably only here because of the pandemic, because they had OTAs and mini camps and Ben was able to throw and the team felt comfortable with him, then Barrett probably would have been cut. Probably just was here to be carried through rookie mini camp essentially. So he's a guy that just needs to make sure he makes it to camp. I think he will right now, but I mean, if they're going to release a quarterback, it's obviously going to be JT Barrett, and I assume snaps are going to be very scarce given the need to play Mason and Paxton and Duck. Even Ben obviously needs reps too.
And, even with whatever decreased maybe schedule that Ben might be put on, during camp, it's still going to be extremely hard for Barrett to get any reps whatsoever.
Right. I mean, look at Duck last year, and even in camp when he played well, the dude threw 85 passes across 14 practices. That is an average of 6 a day. As the number 4, and at times more than that when Ben had off days. So, I mean, what's Barrett going to get reps-wise in a practice? They may have to, do something else with him. I don't know, play slash roll. I don't know. I don't see the reps of quarterback coming for him.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely, extremely tough for him. And obviously, any rep that he gets, he's got to make the most of it. And all, could he potentially, though, his athletic ability result in maybe a couple times a year him being brought in, as a member of the practice squad?
Yeah, they did that last year. Who's that quarterback they brought in before the Ravens game to simulate Lamar? RG3? I forget his name.
Yeah, I forget his name too, but he did a good enough job that they sure looked good in that first meeting against Lamar Jackson,
Yeah. Barrett's best path is just on days where Ben has a day off, and even then, Barrett's only elevated to the number 4 spot. That may give you a couple of reps. That's where he's got to take advantage of his chance, if he gets that far.
All right, true or false, the Steelers will carry 3 quarterbacks this year.
I think that's an easy 100% true, Dave.
Yeah, I think if you could go back in time, would you have still kept Joshua Dobbs?
Yeah, Matthew had the question, I think, about it yesterday on Steelers Depot. In hindsight, yeah, probably, because Dobbs would have probably provided more value than the 5th rounder you got for him, I guess. But I don't cry over spilt milk too much.
I think that the most interesting aspect of the what if that comes with that is maybe you would have potentially have not been, let's assume Mason would have been the backup to Ben last year, Ben obviously the first one off the bench and all, and then he suffered that concussion and all against the Ravens. Could you have done potentially more offensively instead of don't lose the game had you had Joshua Dobbs being the guy to follow Mason Rudolph into some of those games?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
At least be able to have the opportunities maybe to push the football down the field more. And obviously his athletic ability. I mean, make no mistake about it, Joshua Dobbs can or did show a few times, the ability to make some plays with his feet, Yeah.
I think just taking care of the football, making good decisions, I think Dobbs would have been able to do that more successfully, more consistently than Mason or Duck.
All right, how do you feel about the quarterback position, top to bottom?
I mean, I think that Ben can come back, and all the prognosis. Really, the question just comes down to how do you think Ben's going to do this year? And I think there's every reason to believe he'll come back and play like the Ben of old, but there's no guarantee with that, and there's certainly a level of new uncertainty with him we haven't experienced in a long, long time, and a lot of uncertainty behind him too with what's going to happen with Mason and Duck and Paxton and all those young guys trying to compete. So there's intrigue there. There's some hope, but there is uncertainty too. When it comes to quarterback, uncertainty of the position makes you feel a little uncomfortable.
And I guess that plays into why everybody and their brother wanted them to sign every other quarterback in the world, this offseason. But I mean, the realistic aspect of that potentially happening was 0.
Yeah, I mean, that was just silly. I don't even necessarily wholeheartedly disagree with the assessment. I just knew they were just not going to do it. And so talking about it was just a waste of breath.
Right. All right,
Dave, good discussion on the quarterback situation. Let's get to some reader emails and close out the show.
All right. And what position are we going to talk about next, maybe?
Something on offense. We can do O-line or running back. I mean, I'll leave it up to you for the next show. Let us know what position, if you're a listener, let us know what we should talk about.
All right. Ashley Lawson writes in, hi, guys. Ashley Lawson from Newcastle, England. Not trying to tempt fate, but who would be the bigger loss to the offense going down to a serious week 1 injury and missing 10 weeks, Connor or Juju?
I think Juju, because as you talk about the fungibility of the running back position, I think Ben having him will ease the loss of the value Connor brings in the run game. I want to have my weapons available for Ben. So
I would agree wholeheartedly there because the Connor's a power back. I think Benny Snell in his second season now, can give you some should be expected to be able to give you some aspects should Connor miss time and all. With that, I don't want to take Juju. If given my druthers, I'd rather have Juju on the field. Now, hopefully, you didn't tempt fate there, Ashley, and have one of those players miss 10 weeks. I think it'd be brutal. I think it'd be a pretty tough damn blow if Juju didn't miss 10 weeks for this offense.
Yeah, and then what would that mean about his future in Pittsburgh too? I mean, does that mean he's just not going to come back at that point? Because I don't know, but give me Juju over Connor.
All right, here's one from brother Ashley Bright. Dave and Alex, decade-old listener. Thank you, Ashley. Great shows as we are in the off-season filler time. Alex Highsmith on tape doesn't look overly athletic, but looks smart with good technique for a college player. Are those traits going to be good enough as he transitions to the NFL? Would you rather have an athletic player you can teach smarts and technique, or a player like Alex who needs to be taught how to be stronger and faster? Let me start off here first too. When you go back and look at T.J. Watt's college tape, what stuck out to you about T.J. Watt in his college tape? Did you think overly athletic?
What did he test? I mean, on the tape alone, I thought it was good. I think he was pretty advanced for being a relatively newcomer to playing, because he entered Wisconsin as a tight end. So I think he was pretty advanced for where he was at in his career.
Where would you rate the athleticism between Highsmith and Watt both coming out?
Watt, I think, was more athletic. I'm looking at the testing numbers here for those guys to give me a baseline. Yeah, Watt tested really well. I mean, he was 252 pounds. He ran 4.69, 6.793 cone, 37-inch vert, 10.8 in the broad. I mean, Highsmith's testing was okay. 242 pounds, 4.740, 7.323 cone isn't great. 10.6 in the broad, it's decent. 33 vert is just average to a little bit below. I think he shows some decent athleticism on tape. And I think that you have to have a good pass rush plan to succeed. I'll give you a good comparison for that. Bud Dupree coming out, great athlete. Why did the light turn on last year? Well, I think obviously he was healthy, but I think his pass rush plan was a lot better. He was a lot more refined of a player. So I think you have to have both to be successful in today's NFL, especially if you want to be a long-term consistent starter. But you better be able to have smart technique to win consistently as an edge rusher, because these tackles in the NFL are just too good. They're not going to be able to – they're going to beat you if all you're banking on is your athleticism.
So did you answer the question? Would you rather have an athletic player?
I kind of hedged it. At a baseline level, give me the athlete, because I think I can teach him better to be the technician. Like Jarvis Jones was a poor athlete, and just no level of technique was ever going to open it up for him. But I think Highsmith has enough athleticism combined with the technique and smarts and plan that the reader reference, that there is something there with him.
Yeah, you got to really, top to bottom, I think when you look at Alex Highsmith, is there's still a great degree of rawness with him.
I think it's less than people think. I think he's pretty refined for where he's at, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a challenge.
I think he's ahead of the curve when it comes to, because look, he was technically only a 1-year edge rusher.
Right. Where do you see the rawness when you say rawness, and what?
Just in the pass rushing aspect. Because look, we didn't see some aspects of a bull rush that much from him overall. Obviously, against the run, a level of rawness there. Just the overall newness as an edge, that comes along with edge rush. Now, did he progress well? Yeah, but he also did so against the Western Kentuckys.
But yeah, he played against Clemson and Tennessee, and he played really well.
Sure. But I mean, we're talking about Tennessee, not even really as an edge rusher in that game.
Okay, what about the Clemson game?
But the Clemson game, yeah. But I mean, how many total plays are we talking there? I mean, yeah, it was against a good overall opponent in that game, and yeah, obviously got the kudos from Dabo Swinney there. But we're just talking one instance there too. I mean, the rest of the production, was against teams playing Charlotte. But
sure, but all you can do is play the guys you're playing, and he played well against that big competition.
Sure.
I couldn't ask for anything more from that.
But there is still a degree of concern about the area rawness, I think, that comes with him. Now, did he in his one season with that, in that new scheme, as a true edge rusher, did he show a lot? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I agree. He's got to get stronger versus the run. That, to me, is probably his biggest weakness right now. But I think as a pass rusher, he's smart, and actually already have a video plan to do later in the week highlighting that. So that'll be kind of fun breakdown to do. But there is some work to be done. But I think he's got the tools, and I think he showed it last year.
Now, the thing with Bud Dupree, once again, going back with him, is you obviously saw the athleticism on the Kentucky tape. But the thing is you did not get the sense of him coming out of college that, man, this guy, look at the way this guy is able to rush, and counter and things of that nature there. We didn't see Bud Dupree. Still last season was the first time we saw several elements of Bud Dupree as a pass rusher that you hope to see out of NFL players that play his position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the light finally came up. Remember, Kentucky, he didn't have a linebackers coach, and that stunted his development. And he was a guy that was raw coming out. It took a lot of time to figure it out. And I think health was obviously played a factor last year. But, the light came on when Dupree became a complete pass rusher.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. Good to hear from you. Let's see here. Here's one. Patrick Donovan writes in. First, thank you for all you do. Seeing your post about one of Cordell Stewart's runs, do you think he was ahead of his time and would flourish in today's league? I think he would be a top 5 quarterback at playing now. Second with the run first heavy. I don't know how. Second with the run first heavy teams and teams who will rely on the run due to young quarterbacks that will play this year in the AFC North. Cowboys Zeke, Giants Barkley, Redskins Geis, Broncos Titans Henry, Jags Fournette, Texans Watson and Johnson. That's at least 12 games. Could we see the Steelers use base at a higher percentage than the 33% average, around 40%? Feel we have a top 3D against the run, considering the running backs we face and the mobile quarterbacks. We should easily win 12 to 14 games. Okay, his second, I see how he's got this kind of, it's all runs together. It's his first question was about Cordell. Let's answer that first. Was Cordell ahead of his time, and would he flourish in today's league? He says he thinks he would be a top 5 quarterback playing now.
That might be pushing it some, but I understand the premise of the question of, was Cordell a little bit ahead of his time, and would his skill set be more accepted and utilized today? I think absolutely.
Yes, but Cordell made a lot of mistakes that drove Bill Cowher crazy with protecting the football and his kind of inability, I think, at times to read defenses and all. But
do you think that was just because the system wasn't right for him, and if he had played in a system that helped minimize those weaknesses, that he could have flourished even more?
I mean, that's kind of because we never really saw. I guess it's what, chicken and egg, right?
Right, sort of, yeah.
I still don't think he was a smart quarterback overall.
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly that roller coaster effect with him, but I do wonder if because of the scheme was asking him to play more like a pocket passer, not that he was always playing like that, but had the scheme really been tailored for him and someone gone all in on building the offense around him, would you have different results? I think you would have at least slightly different results. But we'll never know.
Here is the thing that's going to be interesting with Lamar Jackson in this season. Okay, rookie season didn't play much. Second season just really, I mean, no two ways about it. Lit it on fire. A lot to do with his athleticism. A lot to do with they had a power running game that here it is. Try to stop it, and a lot of teams couldn't. And then a lot of his success as a passer, I think, worked off of being able to have that successful running game that he was a part of,
right.
The running game. So that's an aspect. I think 2020 is going to be a very intriguing season when it comes to Lamar Jackson. We've heard Ben Roethlisberger talk about it over the years. Come get me a couple years into these guys' careers. Once defensive coordinators have a stack of tape on these guys. So I think we're going to find out how good a maybe a passing quarterback Lamar Jackson is. We all know what he can do at his feet. I think that's pretty evident. It looks like a guy in a video game, an unfair video game at that. But how is this guy when you kind of make him beat you with his arm, top to bottom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to get to the point where you make him beat you with his arm because their run game is so varied and they have so many threats, and they just added another in J.K. Dobbins that getting to that point of shutting down their run game is what essentially you're saying there is a whole lot easier said than done.
Right, but I think we're going to learn a lot about him this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll see how defenses respond, and obviously Pittsburgh handled them as well as anybody last year, and that's always that chess match that both teams will be trying to one up the other and add a new wrinkle to surprise the other team.
All right, number 2 with his question, breaking this down this way. With the run-first heavy teams and teams who rely on run due to young quarterbacks, blah, 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 Cowboys, Giants, Redskins, Broncos, Titans, Texans, that's at least 12 games, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I guess he's asking, could we see a higher percentage of base defense than the 33% average or around a 33% average to around 40%?
He's basing that off. He's basing that off of what?
Basing it off of the opponents this year.
Yeah, I'd have to look at their usage. I actually looked at what the AFC North, what the Steelers were against AFC North opponents last year, and the numbers weren't much different than their overall numbers. I think on average you'll see that number come between 30 to 35% in base. So that's where I'm expecting it for this year.
Right.
Because game circumstance has a lot of factor as much as it does team personality.
Right, because if you're behind, if teams are behind, they're gonna be throwing the ball more, and if they're ahead, they're gonna be running the ball more.
Exactly.
He says, I feel we have a top 3 D against the run, considering the running backs we face and the mobile quarterbacks. We should easily win 12 to 14 games. Number 3 on his list. I look at the Texans as a poor man Ravens teams. With that said, playing the Texans at week 3, it'll be beneficial and help prepare us for the Ravens. I think that's a fair enough statement.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I also think they're just prepared for the Ravens because they just play the Ravens. They're just prepared intrinsically. They team a lot.
They did a good job in that game against the Ravens earlier in the season, last season. So, obviously not so much against the other version that they faced week 17. They just looked like a worn out.
I think Minka admitted as much.
Right.
Someone did.
Just non-optimistic, going through the motions type. Look, we're not going to make the playoffs type of team at that point. Plus, it was wasn't it kind of raining in that game?
Yeah, it was pouring. It's an ugly game.
I mean, that's not an excuse, but it's what's out there.
They used that mesh charge in week 17. I wonder if they're going to do that versus Lamar, where you just attack the quarterback on the mesh.
Hit the quarterback.
Time. Yeah, it'll be interesting because that's on tape now, so the Ravens know it could be coming. So, that's the chess match between what new wrinkle is Keith Butler and the Steelers going to unveil. What new wrinkle will the Ravens have to try to counter that? That's going to be the fun battle to watch.
Keeping that guy contained, half the battle.
Yeah, it's like 90% of the battle, honestly.
This one, Ginger or Mary Ann is the question. I think that's before Alex's time. I'm not even sure. Alex would.
Spice rack question?
No, this is a Gilligan's Island question is what it is. I would assume you would punt on the Ginger or Mary Ann question, right?
Yeah, because I have no idea who either of those people are. I know Gilligan vaguely.
The correct answer is Mary Ann. Let's see. This one from Sam Nguyen. Who will have a better career, Deontay Johnson or James Washington? Where would you rank Big Ben on the all-time quarterback list? I think the first question is easier to answer than the second.
Yeah, Deontay, I'm going to go with over James. Where would I rank Ben on the all-time? I'm terrible with these lists. And I mean, oh, man, top 20? Top 15? What do you think?
Man, I think top 15. And
so many quarterbacks.
Then you get and yeah, there is. And then you get into how far up you can get him into it from there. Geez, I hate these type of questions because you want to, inevitably you're going to have some bias involved in there, an expected bias from people listening to you, and then you have the part of you that's the fan of the game that wants to make sure you give the right respect to others that have played. The Peyton Mannings, the Dan Marinos, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, even today modern. So it's. I think saying 15 is safe, right?
I don't know. I mean, would you put Rodgers ahead of Ben, or would you put Ben ahead of Rodgers? Since you mentioned them,
they're right there, man.
Yeah, close. I mean, Rodgers does have the Super Bowl win over Ben, but
I don't think you can use that as a tiebreaker there.
Oh, but it's that close. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my gut, I don't know. That's a good question. But then I think about the older, the Unitas, Otto Graham, Sammy Baugh, guys like that I think get forgotten about a little bit more these days.
And where would Terry Bradshaw be on the list? I mean,
I think he's behind Ben.
I do too. Overall, as far as and I think I said that maybe on.
Yeah, I think you did.
Maybe it was on a live chat or whatnot. I forget. But maybe it was the last show by going through all this tape, this old Bradshaw tape and all.
But yeah, I think obviously Peyton, Brady, the names I just mentioned. I mean, you get to 10 pretty quickly just off the bat, where you can just rattle them off and say they're all ahead of Ben.
What about his draft class? I mean, Ben's head and shoulders the top out of 2004 draft class, right?
Yeah, I take him over Rivers and Eli.
So that is solved there. I mean, look, Marino was something to behold, man. Manning, geez, yeah, I think
Favre, Montana,
yeah,
Staubach.
Wow.
I
wouldn't rank him ahead of Staubach. No.
No. Yeah, I'm saying, you would put Roger Staubach ahead of Ben.
No, I would
or
not.
Would you not? You wouldn't?
No.
Okay, fair enough. All right. But you would put him, Favre would be ahead of Ben, right?
Tough not to.
Montana.
Yeah.
Steve Young, that's a little closer, I think. Kind of similar dudes.
Yeah, extend to play,
Yeah, athletic. I mean, Young was probably better in the open field, but would you put Steve Young ahead of Ben?
Probably.
Yeah, so, and obviously you have Brady and Peyton. You put Unitas ahead of Ben, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I put Otto Graham. I'd probably put Sammy Baugh. I mean, how many is that we just named right there? At least 10.
Yeah.
I think top 15, top 20, somewhere around there. And hey, maybe if Ben was in the Super Bowl, though, I mean, it's still possible. Career's not over. You push him up a couple more slots.
All right. Let's see here. Hi, David Alex. This is from Mark Urbaniak. Hi, David Alex. You guys are doing a great job with the slow offseason. Couple questions, if you don't mind. A couple of your favorite draft picks, free agents that you were hoping the Steelers would sign that you were surprised that they signed. Someone you were pulling for that you didn't think would be a Steeler for one reason or another. A couple of draft picks / free agents. Wow.
I mean, not a lot of free agents to go off of. I remember banging the table for Bradley Roby 2 years ago, and they actually tried to sign him before they signed Steven Nelson, and ended up going to Houston, settle on Nelson, and it all kind of worked out well for Pittsburgh. Draft picks, though, TJ Watt, I was really happy with Watt. I thought Dupree was going to be on the radar. I didn't think Dupree was going to fall that far. That was my thought. I thought he could even go like top 10. So that was someone that was a nice surprise.
I was way back the ones beating the drum with the DeCastro saying, "Don't be surprised if people kept throwing DeCastro and that will never happen." Area. And I said, I don't know about that. George Kittle, another. Let's see, free agents. I can't really, because just knowing in general how the Steelers just don't do much in free agency, I can't really recall me thinking, oh, this is a free agent that I hope or think that they should get.
Right. Yeah, it's a very limited list.
And really, once the draft picks pass and they don't get, I usually move on pretty quickly overall for guys not named George Kittle, I think.
Yeah.
So that's really hard for me to answer. Part 2, top 2 nastiest Steelers in each decade up to 1969. Wow.
Well, let's start with the 70s, I guess. Lambert and Green.
Joe Green, yeah.
So 80s gets a little tougher there. I would defer to you for 80s suggestions. nastiest Steelers of the 80s.
Well, I mean, you have Greg Lloyd late 80s.
Was he late 80s? Was that like his first year? When did he get drafted? What was his first year in the league?
Was it like 1988?
Yeah, good memory, 88. But he's a 90s guy, though, I think. You put him in the 90s for sure.
You definitely put him in the 90s for sure. Nastiest of the 80s. Man.
Yeah, Merriweather, was he known as a nasty kind of guy? I mean, I'm just trying to think like the best talent in the 80s. Gary Dunn, was he the 80s? Gary Dunn for like first nose tackle in their 3-4 defense, but I don't know if he was known as a really nasty guy either.
Yeah, boy, it's tough coming up with slam dunk.
All right, well, how about the 90s? You got Greg Lloyd for sure.
Green, right?
Yeah, I mean it was brief, but I think enough there. Yeah,
boy, those 3 years, man.
They have like 40-something sacks in 3 years in Pittsburgh.
He was just a fearsome pass rusher during that span there. Obviously Lloyd, so I think that kind of covers that, right?
Yeah, 2000s, Harrison and Porter.
Yeah, I think those would probably be.
This Troy wouldn't qualify as the nasty in that sense, would he?
No, just a playmaker.
Yeah, what about offensive lineman Faneca? Because I don't want to focus on just edge rushers. I mean,
yeah, and if you're going to go back that far, where does Dermontti Dawson fall in?
Yeah, that's a good one for the 90s. Yeah, I mean that's a hard one to go against. And then 2010s era, what would you say? Present day, basically.
Well, I mean, Harrison probably factors into that to some degree.
Probably does. Pouncey, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What about Heinz Ward? You didn't mention Heinz Ward.
Oh, yeah, Heinz Ward, obviously. Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I mean, that guy changed the way the wide receiver position, and some rules, came about because of his tenacity as a blocker. And all, just kind of his physical. Where does Bettis factor into all this? So
yeah, it's tough. There's only two to choose from, though. We got a lot of choices.
Right.
Can we move some of those to the 80s? Can we pretend Bettis or Ward played in the 80s just to fill that spot? Be a lot easier for us.
All right, third part, the top 3 sports movies of all times. I always said Jaws was one because it was a movie about fishing. Yeah, look, Jaws. Jaws is just a great movie in general, but I never really classified it as a sports movie. Top 3, off the top of my head, Bull Durham obviously fits in there. Slapshot, I think, is just brilliant. There, and the other one really that comes to mind, I guess, would kind of be Caddyshack for my age.
I think I would
really
go.
Was Caddyshack really a movie about golf? No.
In the way that Die Hard was a movie about Christmas. Kind of that thing. I mentioned the one earlier. Replacements for me, Major League, just the first one. The rest were garbage. And then I'd go Slapshot at number 3.
Yeah, you really got to watch Bull Durham. I think you'd really enjoy Bull Durham.
I probably would. We'll see if I get to it. I guess I have some free time this year with no camp.
Let's see here. I think that's got most of these questions on the list knocked out, and we managed to knock out almost 2 hours on this thing.
Right.
So
that was a really good quarterback discussion we had. I really enjoyed that.
I wanted to go a little bit deeper into Ben's Ben, toss him to the side, and look, I mean, I think we agree, and have said. Really intrigued by Mason Rudolph this summer. I think we're either gonna come to the conclusion just to toss him on the pile by the end of the summer, or okay, maybe there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where we're at about him, and just the sheer enthusiasm Kevin Colbert seems to have about Paxton Lynch is intriguing.
It is, and again, unfortunately, there's no camp to evaluate, but at least you'll have a lot of preseason action to watch these guys.
All right, we will be back on Friday. I have a feeling the Steelers will be presenting a player or two to talk to the media this week. At least, hopefully, that's the case. Hopefully, there's something juicy or meaningful to talk about. My big play series continues on the Steelers Depot this week as well too. Knocking those out, Alex. What you got coming up film wise, maybe?
Yeah, something on Alex Highsmith. I have the thing on most Kelch today, and I'm probably going to start a new series here coming up because I just finished my top 10 effort series. So we'll have some new content coming up here later in the week.
You know what you ought to take over is my sack breakdown, my sack breakdown list that I do every year. Maybe you ought to take that over this off season while I'm busy mopping up the big plays for 50 years here.
Yeah, which is that? That's there's just analysis of it.
Yeah, just breaking down all the Steelers sacks last year by player.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have access to an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Also, remember that Alex and I, as the heading on into the kind of the final stages of the off season here, we do a Monday night live stream on the YouTube machine that gets started at 7:00 Eastern time every Monday. Having some nice turnouts for that. We answer a lot of questions during that as well too. We invite everybody to be a part of that. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.